Hello. I had a long drive today and I was thinking about a video call client that I had years ago. She was hung up on someone, very much attached, in limerence, you might say. She was really struggling to move on from this person despite it having been more of a situationship than a relationship. She felt obsessed. It was quite a common situation wherein she accepted and admitted and knew that this wasn't love, but the attachment was real. I thought I'd share this because following on from the videos that I've recently made about stopping and replacing negative thoughts with positive ones and changing the way that your brain's currently working from this constant rumination around a person. Anyway, one of the things that was a huge issue for her were triggers. Things that sharply stabbed these emotions back to that person. Often triggers are more passive things that we kind of instantly experience, like a particular song or a comment by a friend or the smell of an aftershave. But sometimes those triggers are more explicit, more real and physical. And for her, it was road signs and a journey. The journey was to his house. He lived about a 45-minute drive from where she lived. She'd get in her car and drive there, pretty much at his whim. Whenever he wanted to see her, she'd arrive. They'd do their thing. It wasn't particularly romantic, but time was spent together at his house. She'd spend the night now and then she'd drive home. The town he lived in was quite a major town. Lots of road signs served as jarring, great big shiny metal reminders of this man and this house and this situation. Every day she'd see these signs on her way to work. She'd see this road, she'd see these triggers and reminders, and it hurt. So, after much discussion around how we could approach and manage and maybe lessen these feelings of being triggered, we went around and around until together we came to an approach that helped her enormously. Drilling down into issues like this often involves a little digging to find the actual feelings behind what's triggering you and why. Every time she saw this man, she'd be in the car on the journey there, dressed up, made up, happy, and anticipating seeing him. Seeing this person to whom she was so attached. Maybe this time he'll realise he loves me. Maybe this time he'll kiss me and tell me that he cares. Maybe this time, maybe. The drive home, it turned out, was rather a different mood. More often than not, she'd feel used, low, unappreciated, frustrated, unlovable, at being unable to get through to this avoidant person who just wouldn't seem to give her what she so desperately wanted. All of that low mood, all of those sad early hours, next morning drives, all of that time to ruminate and overthink about the time they'd just spent, about the things he hadn't said and the lack of love. What we learned was that time was where the trauma really was. It was the perfect metaphor, really. The drive there was the optimism, the pedestal, the rose-tinted, unsatisfiable hope, racing heart and fancy pants. The way home was the realism, the cold, awful realization that when the romance that she'd yearned for so hard that she'd invented was nothing more than hope, that it was never real. The drive home was the trigger for the trauma of that situation. So what did we do? How did we deaden the trigger? She made the return journey whilst we spoke on the phone. She sat in the car, in the realism, in the reality of what that avoidant relationship actually was. In a very courageous move, she drove home from his street. We replayed how she would have felt if she'd seen him, if she'd spent time with him. She paid close attention to those signs. She noted that scenery. She faced the situation where she had no choice but to face the painful reality of that relationship and what it really was. There's no hiding from that pain. You can suppress it, sure. You can distract yourself with stuff. You can fool yourself and people around you that it doesn't matter, that it doesn't hurt. But it won't go. It won't go away. It won't dissipate. It won't dissolve until you sit in it, until you feel it, until you look at it, until you face it, until you feel it. Feel the pain. Sit with it. Let the feelings come. Don't hide from them. Be brave, because dodging them right now is just a guarantee that they'll be back later, and worse. Realism is the beginning of your healing. Big hug.